Hi friends, now we can discuss the topic welfare economics and the criteria of social welfare. Since various parts of the economy are interdependent, a change in one part of the economy affects the resource allocation in other parts. The central problem in the welfare economics is whether a particular change in the resource allocation will increase or decrease social welfare. Whether a change will lead to a change in social welfare or not. Welfare economics is thus concerned with the evaluation of alternative economic situations from the point of view of society's well-being. To illustrate this definition, we can assume that total welfare of the country is W, but given the factor endowments and technology, it is possible to increase welfare into W star. That means actual production is W and potential production is W star. Then the task of welfare economics are: number one, to show that in the present state W is less than W star. That is, actual welfare is less than potential welfare. And number two, to suggest ways of raising W to W star. However, the major difficulty in welfare economics is that it is not possible to measure social welfare objectively. It is a subjective concept. Social welfare refers to social well-being. To evaluate social well-being, it involves interpersonal comparison of utilities. As a result of many policy changes, some person becomes better off while some becomes worse off. Such situations involves interpersonal comparison of utilities. Criteria of social welfare. To evaluate alternative economic situations, we need some criteria of social well-being. The measurement of social welfare requires some ethical standard and interpersonal comparisons. Both of them involve subjective value judgment, not objective. Various criteria of social welfare has been suggested by economists at different times. The major among them are growth of GDP, Benthams criterion, Cardinalistic criterion, and Pareto optimality criterion. Number one, growth of GNP as a criterion of welfare. Even from Adam Smith's period, GDP is considered as a major criteria to evaluate welfare of the people. Adam Smith implicitly accepted the growth of the wealth of society, that is growth of GNP, as a welfare criterion. He believed that economic growth resulted in the increase of social welfare because growth increased employment opportunity and availability of goods and services for consumption. Thus, GNP and social welfare are positively related. Growth criterion highlights efficiency, the term efficiency in social welfare. As we know, efficiency refers to the optimum level. There are different concepts of efficiency: production efficiency, consumption efficiency, etc. level of production is said to be efficient if maximum output is produced with the given resources. Similarly, consumption is said to be efficient if maximum satisfaction is attained by utilizing the given resource or given products. Thus, efficiency is a necessary prerequisite for maximization of level of welfare. Although GNP is used as a general index of welfare, it has certain limitations. Growth criterion implies the acceptance of the status quo of income distribution as ethical one or just one. But unequal distribution may reduce the level of welfare. Similarly, social costs is not accounted or very difficult to account in the national income statistics. There may be pollution, wastages, over-exploitation of the limited resources, etc. So, underestimation of the social cost will lead to the low level of social welfare. Then, composition of output. The production may be, the national income may be as a result of producing necessary commodities, luxurious commodities, and the commodities which are related to the provision of law and order in the economy, that is like defense articles. So the composition of output to be clearly identified while evaluating the level of welfare. Another limitation is that the actual welfare of the people depends upon the liberty, freedom, level of education and health, etc. These social indicators cannot quantitatively measure, and in many cases GNP statistics fails to account such things. Another criterion is Bentham's criterion. Jeremy Bentham, an English economist, argued that welfare is improved when greatest good is acquired for greatest number. It means greatest happiness for greatest numbers. It implies that total welfare is the sum of utilities. Social welfare can be the sum of utilities derived by the individuals of the society. Let us assume that the society consists of three individuals, A, B and C. Then total welfare will be the sum of utilities derived by these three individuals. That is, W is equal to UA plus UB plus UC. According to Bentham's criterion, change in welfare is positive if change in utility of A plus, change in utility of B plus, change in the utility of C is greater than 0. If two individuals are better off while third is worse off after a change, but the sum of the increase in utilities of the two is greater than the decrease in the utility of the third one, indicates an improvement in welfare. Thus, Bentham's criterion considers interpersonal comparison of utilities. This criterion also having certain limitations. Bentham's criterion cannot be applied to compare situations where greatest good and greatest number do not exist simultaneously. For example, in a particular situation, utility of A equal to 200 utils, utility of B is equal to 50, utility of C is equal to 30, then total utility is the sum of 200 plus 50 plus 30 is equal to 280 utils. In another situation, utility of A is equal to 100 utils, B is equal to 80, utility of C is equal to 80, then total utility is the sum of 100 plus 80 is equal to 260 utils. Here, the first situation has the greatest good, that is 280, but the second situation involves greatest number, that is utility of B and utility of C are 80. It is greater than that of from the first situation. Such cases, Bentham's criterion cannot be applied to compare level of welfare. Another criterion, the third criterion is Cardinalistic criterion. The Cardinalistic economists believed in the cardinal measurement of utility, and they follows the principle of law of diminishing marginal utility as a criterion of welfare. Their argument can be illustrated with an example. Suppose a society consists of three individuals A, B and C. A has an income of 1000 rupees and B and C have an income of 500 rupees each. Consumer A then can buy double quantities of goods as compared to B and C. However, as per the law of diminishing marginal utility, A's total utility is less than that of B and C. Thus, A's utility W is less than that of the combined utility of B and C, that is W star. Therefore, to increase social welfare, income should be redistributed among three individuals. Thus, cardinal welfare theorists maintain that social welfare would be maximized if income was equally distributed. This criterion has certain limitations. It assumes that all individuals have identical utility functions for money, so that with equal income distribution, all would have the same marginal utility of money. But it is not clear. It is not the actual fact. Individuals differ their attitude towards money. A rich person may have a utility for money function that lies far above the utility of money function of poor individuals. He may be a risk taker. Individuals differ. Some individuals behave like a risk taker, some are risk averters, some are risk neutral in behavior. In this case, a redistribution of income may reduce the total welfare. The opponents also argue that the redistribution of income may reduce the incentive to work of the various individuals. Similarly, equal income in all employment may lead to an allocation of resources which produces a smaller total output. Thus, in many cases, equal distribution results in efficiency in the use of resources and reduction in social welfare. One of the major criterion of social welfare is the fourth one, that is the Pareto optimality criteria, developed by the Italian economist Vilfredo Pareto. In the period 1848 to 1923. Vilfredo Pareto developed a criterion to evaluate social welfare called Pareto optimality criterion. According to this criterion, any change that makes at least one individual better off without making any other worse off is an improvement in social welfare. If a policy change makes everyone better off, then no doubt such a change indicates improvement in social welfare. Similarly, social welfare will decrease if, as a result of a policy change, some individual becomes worse off without making others better off. But according to Pareto, any change that make at least one person better off without making any other worse off indicate improvement in social welfare. With the help of this criterion, we can define the state of maximum social welfare, which is known as Pareto optimality or Pareto efficiency. Thus, an economic state or situation is said to be Pareto optimal or efficient, in which allocation of resources is such that by any rearrangement of them, it is impossible to make any individual better off without making any others worse off. Pareto's concept of social welfare is said to be free from any value judgments because it is not based on interpersonal comparison of utilities. Pareto criterion can be better explained with the help of the Edgeworth box diagram. In the Edgeworth box, we can represent the two individuals' behavior simultaneously. The Edgeworth box, here we represent the behavior of two individuals, individual A and individual B. The preference of the first individual A is represented by the indifference curves A1, A2, A3, etc., A5. The preference of individual 2, that is individual B, is represented by B1, B2, B3, B4 and B5. And the tangency points of the indifference curves represents the as line called Edgeworth contract curve of exchange. On the contract curve of exchange, the slope of indifference curve are equal. We can notice that every point on the Edgeworth curve represents Pareto efficient points, and the points outside the contract curve represents inefficient points. For example, the point Z is an outside point to the contract curve where two indifference curve A3 and B2 intersects. That is, the slope of indifference curve are not equal. It is an example of inefficient point because through a rearrangement of resources, it is possible to move either to point C or to point D or in between C and D on the Edgeworth-Conrad curve. While moving from Z to C, the individual A remains at the same indifference curve A3, while the indifference curve of B now reaches at a higher level, that is B3. That is, point C indicates individual A remains the same level of satisfaction while B is better off. Similarly, a movement from Z to D represents a improvement in welfare because the individual B remains the same level, B2, while A becomes better off, that is A reaches a higher indifference curve, A4. Thus, A better off while B remains the same level, not worse off, which indicates the improvement in social welfare. Thus, according to Pareto optimality or Pareto criterion, any change that makes anyone better off without making others worse off indicates improvement in social welfare. Pareto criterion can also explain with the help of Samuelson's utility possibility curve. Here, Samuelson's utility possibility curve is represented. It indicates the utility level of two individuals, A and B. All points on the utility possibility curve are efficient points, and the points inside the curve represents inefficient points, because we can notice that a movement from the point P, an inside point, to the point C or A or B or in between C and B makes at least one individual better off and no one worse off. For example, movement from P to C, the X level of utility level or X1 remains the same, while the utility of the second person, it is increased from OY3 to OY1. There is an improvement in utility at an extent of Y3, Y1. Similarly, movement from P to B also indicates improvement in welfare because utility of X increased while Y remains the same. P to point A indicates improvement in utility of both X and Y. Thus, Pareto optimality or Pareto criterion can be used to explain or to identify or to examine whether a change from one situation to another situation indicates improvement in welfare or not. And he concluded that any change which make at least one person better off and no one worse off indicates improvement in welfare. Now we can conclude here. Thank you.